Hello, Movie Crusaders, and welcome to our end of the year videos. My name is Sean Waskrug. With me, as always, is Brian Michaels. It's been a while since we've been on, and that's because Sean's been a sick mofo for pretty much all of December. I had a really, really bad cold, which turned into COVID, which turned into a incredibly horrible cough that makes me pretty much impossible to shoot videos. The cough is still here, but luckily, I've got Brian here with me. So if you see some drastic edit cuts or me muting, it's probably because I'm dying on this end and Brian's having to take over. But it's the start of the new year. We have to shoot these videos before it gets too late because y'all ain't gonna care about this shit after a week. So we're here. We love doing these videos. These are probably Brian and I's favorite videos to shoot. At the end of the years. This is our most disappointing and worst movies of the year, aka the episodes where Brian and Sean get heated, probably more me than Brian, which I'm going to try to hold myself in so I don't go into a coughing fit.
That's my advantage, actually. I'm going to hope that when you try to attack me that you get in a coughing fit and you can't fight back.
Or vice versa, because I know that there's going to be at least one movie on both sides that we know that the other person liked that we're going to attack. But these are movies that are and here we've already started.
Counter up here for
start a cough counter. Sean's died 8 times during this video.
Or we can start a pool. How many videos into the year until Sean dies?
Dark. We'll call that a Deadpool. But that's how we're gonna go with it. But these are, like I said, these are the shows that Brian and I enjoy watching. These are conversations that Brian and I have at least 10 plus times during the year, talking about, what we've liked, disliked, what's your top 10 looking like? What's my top 10 looking like? And that's what we do. And I would say this, and I'm probably going to say this during our best video as well. 2022 hasn't been that great of a year, movie-wise. Because I think you and I both were in agreement. We talked about this last month and we were coming up with our top 10 with like 3 weeks left. We were like, I'm not real satisfied with my top 10. Are you? And you weren't really either. And I think it's a lot of the movies are fine. They're not great. Would you agree? Disagree?
I think there were a bunch of great movies, but when we got down to talk about your top 10, top 20, towards the bottom half of those, you're like, these wouldn't make it in a lot of other years. So, I mean, I wouldn't say that there have not been great movies, because there have been. Just in terms of sheer quantity, it's been kind of, and it's not like all the movies have been bad either, because I had a hard time filling out my worst list too. It's just been a lot of that middle mediocrity.
Yeah, just fine for a lot of them. And it's been hard to review them too, because it's like, man, I feel like every movie I'm giving this the same 10-point range, and it's like, because they're all just okay. They're
for Sean, that's horrible, because he has to figure out what exact percentage to put them in the right order.
It is literally fucking nightmare to do that shit. Brian's just like, oh, that's that star, and I'm like, okay, this is a 76%. This is
76.28%. Because it has to be between this.
It causes me way more than a headache than I would love to admit. But this is the easier ones because these are the worst. And when you hate a movie, you hate a movie. And there are some really, really bad movies that came out this year.
We'll have the usual disclaimer. We didn't see everything. There's a lot of stuff I'm sure that's worse that we're not even watching that. So just
we say that we say that every year.
Yes.
If there's a movies outside of, I think, 2 or 3 this year that either you saw because you just wanted to see how bad it was, or I saw because I was just like, we gotta see just how horrible this movie is. Like last year's, was it last year's or was it 2 years ago with Home Alone? I think it was last year. Last year. Yeah, where you were like, why did you watch? I was like, because I just had to see how bad it was, and it was the worst movie of the year last year. So if there are movies that are like, well, what about this movie? There's a good possibility we probably didn't watch it because it just looked that bad. We're like, we have to keep our sanity somehow because we both have seen over 100 movies this year, and we can't watch everything.
Yeah, and I
So,
also tend to watch a lot of the like straight to VOD kind of obscure movies that nobody else has watched. Unless something really hit me strongly, I did not include those in here either. So
oh,
I, 'cause
you didn't
I
put
saw
any
a
of
bunch
them
of
on
really
there?
bad ones, but those aren't on my list.
Okay, because during our half year, you had some that was like I didn't even know that was a movie, but
Yeah, well,
you kind of kept a
now
lot
there's
of
been
those
enough
off
stuff
this
to
year.
fill out the list. I didn't need to include that obscure things like Mel Gibson in Panama, things like that,
Yeah, which you had during the
which
half
I had
year.
on there. But now there's enough regular movies. So.
Yeah. So and before we get even into the movies, spoiler warning, because especially in this video, because this video we are either disappointed or we hated these films. We don't care if we spoil these movies because these movies are awful. Well, not necessarily disappointing, but the worst are awful, and we don't care that we spoil these films because they don't deserve to be saved from being spoiled. So here's your little spoiler alert right now that we are going to go over stuff that if you consider it spoiler or you haven't seen it yet, you're like, what? Here's your warning. I don't want to hear any complaining. But we're going to start with disappointing, and let's go ahead and get that disclaimer out of the window. Just because it's on disappointing does not mean we didn't like the film. It means that it did not reach our level of expectation. It might have been fine, but not as good as we wanted it to be, or it sucked. But for the most part, disappointed is not necessarily the bad films. It's the films that didn't reach the levels that Brian and I thought that they should have achieved. So we might be more frustrated talking about these movies because we either really really wanted these movies to do well and they just didn't, or they broke our hearts in certain ways, especially for me on some instances. But before we jump in, Brian, any thoughts on your disappointment before we go into the list?
No, just kind of the same thing you already said. In that, I mean, some of these may be on my worst list or close to it, but most of them are more a matter of they had this potential or had these expectations or hopes, and they just fell short of them. So some of them might be awful movies, some of them might be good movies. They just aren't where I wanted them to be.
Yeah, and I do my best with surprising and disappointing. That if they're in my worst or best list, then they're not going to be on my disappointing
I
or
don't do that.
surprising because I try to get as many movies called out as I can. So if I'm bringing up disappointing, you're not going to hear them on any of the other lists. So these are all movies in their own special categories. But first things first, we're going to start with our honorable mentions for most disappointing. Brian, you had how many? Just one?
I got 5
Oh, you got 5. It's
for
surprising
disappointed.
you only
Yes.
one. Okay. So, Brian, why don't you go ahead with your 5 disappointing? And the way we do this, for anyone who hasn't watched this before, and I'm just going to throw a movie out there. One that's because I don't know Brian's list. He doesn't know my list. Let's say Brian says, of course, I've seen over 100 movies and I just blanked out on them all. Because I know he didn't see it. Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. Let's say he pulls that one out. And he brings that up for honorable mention, but let's say I have that as my second most disappointing film of the year. Brian's going to go ahead and say everything he wants to say about it. I'm going to hold mine off until I get to my number 2 disappointed, and I'll talk about it there. So if you're wondering why we're both not chiming in on a certain movie, it's because we might have it ranked later in the video. So that's how we kind of do it. So Brian, go ahead with your 5 honorable mentions for most disappointing.
Okay. My first honorable mention is actually one that I think is a good movie, but it's not what I want it to be. And that's The Banshees of Inisherin. This is a movie. I think it may be unfair to compare it and to expect it to meet In Bruges, which is just a great movie. This one, great acting performances. I think even the concept of the story is good, but honestly, it gets a little boring. So it's while it's a good movie with good performances, didn't live up to what I wanted it to be. My next honorable mention is A Christmas Story Christmas. This is one that I just had such high hopes for because I love A Christmas Story, and they've made these kind of pseudo sequels like straight to video and things like that. But this is like the official sequel. Peter Billingsley was back. I thought, maybe it's going to be good. It wasn't that good at all. Disenchanted. Same thing on that one. The original I thought was such a fun, endearing movie. This one, we were getting this Disney Plus sequel however many years later. I kind of had high hopes for it. I kind of liked the twist they were going for in the trailer. But honestly, it just ended up being kind of blah and mediocre and honestly kind of boring through most of the movie. Don't Worry, Darling. This is one, the story itself, well, from the trailers, you couldn't even tell what the story really was. It was mainly because it was Olivia Wilde's follow-up to Booksmart, and then you got Florence Pugh, and you got some other good actors in there as well. But I think Booksmart is one of those ones that set you up for, wow, I can't wait to see what this director does next. This movie was not all that great. Florence Pugh was phenomenal, but she was one of the only good things about the movie, honestly. I think the movie looked good, but the story and everything did not work for me. And my last honorable mention is Moonfall. Moonfall, I never expected to be a quote-unquote good movie. It looked like it was going to be one of those, earth destruction, disaster, just fun movies, which I'm a sucker for those kind of movies, whether it be 2012, Day After Tomorrow, any of that kind of thing. This movie, though, took itself way too seriously and forgot to just be a fun movie, and then it took some weird twists that kind of ruined it, and it was just not fun at all. Those are my honorable mentions.
So one of them is on my list.
Okay.
So I will be talking about that in a little bit. And then one of them was on my disappointing, but it ended up being in my worst. So I took it off.
Okay.
Based off of what you brought up. I almost put Banshees on my disappointed because In Bruges is so fucking good. But Banshees is also really, really good. But they're two different films. So you could be disappointed because you just
that's why it's my bottom honorable mention, because it's still good. It just wasn't what I wanted it to be.
Yeah. So I mean, I get it, but I mean that one. If there was like a sixth honorable mention, that's where that one would probably be for me. I never cared for the first Christmas Story, so I had no interest in seeing the second one. I'm not a huge Christmas movie guy.
Sean has no heart. I
have plenty of heart. The problem is Christmas movies get so beaten into the ground around that time of the year that you just
especially that one, which literally plays for 24 hours every year.
When I used to work for a cable company, I had to sit next to those TVs and it played that. So I'm sorry, that and like It's a Wonderful Life, and I despise both those films because I've watched them ad nauseum. And when you're at work getting yelled at by customers in a headphone, and then and then you try to look away to try to despair, and all you got is fucking Christmas Story. No, so I had no interest in seeing the second one. And then that's all I'll mention for your honorable mentions without giving some away. My honorable mentions, as I try to get through this, in no particular order for honorable mentions because they're honorable mentions. Black Adam, that we both said in the fall that The Rock, that we didn't really care about the Black Adam character, but The Rock or Dwayne Johnson was so passionate about this role and about this movie that he made us care about going to see this film. And the movie's just blah. It just wasn't that good. It really wasn't at the end of the day. And I kind of just felt, I don't want to say I felt like screwed over by The Rock, because I don't, because that's not fair. That's not his fault. He's doing what he can with that film. You're just like, man. And when everyone said like, oh yeah, Black Adam's not going to be a part of the new slate, at least not yet, we're like, that's fair.
I'm fine with that. Yeah.
That's totally fair. It's like Eternals. It's like you don't need to bring him up again. It's fine. Like I want The Rock to do something else because he deserves to be involved. Black Adam, not so much. Next for me is one that we both kind of were going into. This is gonna be bad potentially, but we kind of hoped that it hopefully they stick the landing, and it didn't. And that was Halloween Ends. Did not make obviously my worst because but Halloween Ends, we both hated Halloween Kills. We both despised that second film, but we were like, this is the third one. They have an idea. They must have an idea. They must have a plan of what they're gonna do, and we're hopeful that it's gonna be good. And what we got was like 5 different movies shoved into one, and then all of them were abandoned in the third act to just give us the movie that we thought we were going to get. But at that point, we didn't care anymore. It was a horrible end to the trilogy. This is a trilogy that, to me, I think everyone says they love. And it's like, are you guys watching the same movies? Because this is a failed trilogy. You had an okay first film, a shitty second film, and an uneven, disappointing third film.
I honestly think everyone I've talked to has the exact same opinion, though. So,
well, see, that's the thing is, I'm talking. They're all saying that Halloween Ends was good, and that they liked this trilogy. I was like, what are you smoking? This trilogy is horrible because a lot of people apparently don't hate Halloween Kills as much as we do, and I'm like, That was one of the worst films of the year last year. Like, we adamantly hated that film. Next is one that's probably going to be higher up for you because I know you really, really enjoyed it. And this was my number one most anticipated film for the fall. And while I still enjoyed it, it just didn't reach my anticipation because it was my number one, and that was Amsterdam. I love the three main leads. I thought the story was kooky enough, but there's a lot of wooden dialogue and story ends just kind of go dead end. There's one horrifically awful performance by Chris Rock in the film, and it was more just kind of fine for what it was and not good to great like I was hoping it with David O. Russell and the cast that we got. So that one is an honorable mention. Another one that I know you and I both were in agreement on was Nope. Jordan Peele. We love Jordan Peele, but Nope for me just did not. It was fine, but I think overrated by a lot of people. That stupid monkey storyline that went absolutely fucking nowhere, and the whole aliens aspect was fine, but it wasn't anything great. And I think with Us and Get Out, we had this level, and Nope was here. It's not a bad movie, but it just wasn't a real good.
It definitely ranks 3 among the Jordan Peele movies.
Absolutely. So. Yeah. And then another one that I think you and I both enjoyed for what it was, but could have been better, was Netflix's The Gray Man. Action-wise, I thought was good. Chris Evans, loved his villain. I think Gosling was fine in the role. It was just more, the story was a little convoluted. I'm sure we're going to talk about this in our award show. Completely misused and disrespected Jessica Henwick as an actress in that film. And at the end of the day, it was just kind of, I think also they kind of wasted Ana de Armas in the film as well.
Not as bad as No Time to Die, but yes.
No, yeah. Well, No Time to Die, she at least had one badass scene that made you want to see her more. Anna really never had that scene in Gray Man. It's fine. It's a fine action Netflix film. But I think with the cast and the action sequences that we got, I think we just expected a better story and we just didn't get it. But those were my honorable mentions for most disappointing of the year. I'll go ahead and roll into my 5. Okay. This is a movie that at the beginning of the year, this was high on both Brian and I's list. We were salivating with excitement for this film because we both love the director, even though he makes some really, really shitty films. And I know Brian's trying to figure out what it is. I think he might have gotten it right.
I think I know where you're going with it. Okay.
Right when I said about the director, I think you figured out what it was. But by the time this movie came out, we both were just like, yeah, that wasn't as good as we hoped it was. And that was Michael Bay's Ambulance. Cast-wise, Yahya Abdul-Mateen, he's growing. I love him. I think everything he does is really good. Jake Gyllenhaal as a villain, it is an untapped resource. When he plays a villain like this and Nightcrawler and even Spider-Man No Way Home, he does so well that you don't use him enough for it. But the problem with Ambulance is, and you and I both had this problem, is that Michael Bay kept trying to manipulate us throughout the film to go, Yahya and Jake's characters aren't that bad. It's like, no, they're fucking criminals. They've killed people. And you could try to chalk Yahya up to being this like, I'm being forced into the situation. But at the end of the day, he's just as guilty. He's just as bad as Jake, but he's got a family. And it's like, no, shut the fuck up. They are both bad guys. And stop trying to humanize them into making us care that these guys are good. Your lady that you love, I'm going to say her first name wrong. Say it,
Isa Gonzalez.
Isa Gonzalez. She's great in the film. The chase sequences they're well shot, but the movie is incredibly overly long. There's a Mexican gang subplot that is really unnecessary and unneeded in the film, and it overstayed its welcome. They completely screwed over Garrett Dillahunt, who was great in the film. I think we both were on the side of it was fine for what it was, but ultimately it was a disappointment. Anything for Ambulance, or are we going to be talking about it later?
I will talk about that later.
Okay, go ahead with your number 5.
My number 5, Sean won't have on his list. My number 5 was Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. This is a movie that I kind of had a feeling going into it that I was not going to love it, but I still had hopes for it. I still had high expectations for it because you got Sam Raimi, who seems perfect for like this horror kind of theme they were going for, and of course the first Doctor Strange movie, and then Doctor Strange in the Avengers movies and stuff. I have really liked him. The problem for me is I didn't care at all about the America Ferrera character. I think that the whole thing with the multiverse, I think the multiverse is the worst thing that's happened to the MCU. I think it's just an excuse to like just kind of bring in other things in, and it can be used well. Like in Spider-Man Far From Home, it was totally a gimmick, but they made
No
it
Way
work,
Home.
and I enjoyed it. What did I say?
You said Far From Home.
I meant No Way Home. Yes, it was totally a gimmick, but they made it work, and it worked very well in that movie. In this one, though, of course, and everyone went into it with expectations of like every single iteration of every Marvel characters ever existed is going to be in this movie, which I did not think that. So that is not my disappointment. It had nothing to do with that because I was the one person saying stop expecting all those things.
We both were.
Yeah. But I meant I'm among other people though.
Yeah,
I was not part of that party.
Mhm.
But it's just like I just think that all the cameos they did put in there just seemed like forced in as dumb little cameos, some little fan service. I like John Krasinski. Seeing him as Reed Richards was a waste if you're going to use him, and B, if this is the version of them they used, he was really boring in this role, so I wouldn't want him to be Reed Richards in the Fantastic Four. I think acknowledging the show, not that Black Bolt came from
Inhumans.
Inhumans, acknowledging that show existed. That's a mistake. Trying to connect with Patrick Stewart as Xavier. It just seems like all the kind of stuff just seemed shoehorned in there for no reason. And then when you got into the other multiverses and things, just the whole storyline of it didn't. I did not hate the movie. I actually gave it a skewing positive review.
Yeah.
There are definitely things about it I liked, but I was disappointed because it just, I don't know, didn't quite completely work for me.
Yeah, I will be talking about this movie in a different video. So I'm not going to talk about it here because we're not going to get into a whole debate about it. Go ahead with your number 4.
My number 4 is The Fabelmans. The Fabelmans is Steven Spielberg's kind of semi-pseudo autobiographical film about his growing up and his family. Now, when we saw previews and things for this movie and we heard the loglines in this movie, we kind of thought it was like, showing how Spielberg as a kid was kind of growing to learn to love the movies and learn to love filmmaking and moving into that in his career. And yes, it was going to have some family life stuff in it. But then the movie, when I went and saw it, turned out to be mostly just about his family difficulties and his parents, marital problems and their divorce and all this kind of thing. And then a little bit of movie stuff kind of there in the background, which I touched on once in a while. And when they were touching on Spielberg and kind of him filmmaking and things like that, I'm sorry, the pseudo Spielberg, the Fableman kid. I actually did enjoy the movie, but I didn't care about the parents. I'm not a big fan of Dano or Williams to start with, and neither of them really impressed me in their roles here. So the movie, while not a bad movie, is just not the movie I wanted to see. So that's why it's on my most disappointed.
That movie will also be talked about in a different video for me, so I will not talk about it here. My number 4 is one that you brought up in your honorable mentions, and that's Disenchanted. You and I watched this together. We watched Enchanted, and then we watched Disenchanted right after it. And one thing that I can remember while we were watching it together was that when we were watching Enchanted, we were actually having a fun time. We were having a good time watching Enchanted because Enchanted was a really well done film. It was very meta. For a Disney movie to be meta on top of themselves is very, un-Disney. But it was enjoyable, great performances, good music, all that kind of stuff. So we were excited to watch Disenchanted because when we saw that trailer and we saw that twist, that hook, oh God, I'm blanking on Amy Adams' character name in the movie. Giselle. It was going to be, turned to bad. It was like, oh shit. We don't really get to see Amy Adams play a bad guy or bad girl. So we were both intrigued by it, but this movie was not good at all. And like they completely shoehorn or waste Patrick Dempsey and James Marsden to the point where we felt that they were maybe barely ever on set for this film. They were just kind of like, oh, they're off doing something else, aka we couldn't get them on
We
show.
have them for a day. Let's shoot some scene with them.
Exactly. Like they sent Patrick Dempsey on some stupid side mission that really equated to nothing in the story. Marsden just disappeared for the whole film. Amy Adams is doing her best. I have nothing against her. The young actress who plays her daughter, she was fine, but I also was wondering why the girl who played the daughter in the first film, who has a blink and you'll miss it moment in the second one, was not just used. It's probably because she can't
Now
sing.
she just plays one of the townspeople in the background in one scene.
Yeah, it was probably because this young actress had to sing and maybe she couldn't sing, and that's probably why they did the recasting.
Well, I think we also determined that the age they were going for, more time had passed than they actually wanted her to age.
That is true too. That is true. But the story elements for the whole evil stepmother thing just did not work. It fell flat. The music was uninspired. They kept Maya Rudolph, who I'm not the craziest fan of. She's great in stuff like Big Mouth, but I really don't care for her in a lot of other things. She wasn't. I think the only thing she was good at in this is when she had that one song with her and Amy Adams kind of one up one another. That was probably the only part of the movie where I was like, this is actually good. They forced Idina Menzel down our throats because of Frozen, which I love her. She's a great singer. But because she's bigger now than she was when Enchanted came out, they were forcing her character in. They forced 2 musical numbers in for her, which weren't good either. Neither song was good. And I don't think she even really sang them that well in the movie. But ultimately, by the end of it, and then also this, and you and I both count this, this is clearly going to be released on ABC during the holiday season in future years, because there's literally 3 or 4 cut scenes that cue to commercial where it just goes fade to black, comes back like a commercial break. And I'm like watching this like, why is this being filmed like a TV movie? This is a movie.
I think that whoever was making it, they said, "Oh, I'm making this for Disney Plus," and they didn't realize Disney Plus doesn't have commercials or something. I don't know.
Yeah, because they literally like 3 or 4
Maybe
times.
they're planning ahead for the ad tier,
Yeah, it was like lead into commercial, something happens, fade to black, comes back, different scene. I was like, this is what a TV movie does. It was just it felt like a cash grab, failed experiment, much like they did with like Lady and the Tramp and stuff like that for Disney Plus. And ultimately, Enchanted deserved better than what we got with Disenchanted. Like I said, it by movie standards, it's average, below average. It's not one of the worst films in the year by any means. But in terms of where it should be compared to where it was, it is definitely one of the most disappointing films of the year. Going to my number 3, which is probably going to be your number 1, is Clerks 3. I loved Clerks 2. I am not one of those people that thinks that Clerks is one of the best comedies of all time. I think Clerks is fine for what it was. It's very of the 90s, grungy, black and white artsy kind of film. That didn't make me fall in love with these characters. Clerks 2 is what made me fall in love with Randall and Dante. Thank you. I wanted to say Damien. I was like, that's not right. And even Elias. I almost said Elijah. Cough brain is really starting to take over. And I loved these characters in Clerks 2. Just thinking of scenes from Clerks 2 still makes me laugh, like Pillow Pants and the Lord of the Rings and Return of the Jedi conversation. I loved that movie so much. Clerks 3, when we heard they were coming back, we were excited, but we were kind of very timid because, it's been a while and we didn't really know what story we were going to have with it. But what the movie that we got is we got this incredibly melodramatic, overly dramatic story that honestly wasn't funny. And that's the bread and butter of Clerks 3. Is it supposed to be funny? I can quote you at minimum 10 lines from Clerks 2 right now. Could not quote you one single line from Clerks 3. It's not memorable. All that's memorable about it is the dramatic moments, which like I said, I love Dante and Randall, but those actors are not the greatest actors to be doing that with. Jay and Silent Bob really don't have a whole lot to do except kind of let Kevin Smith actually be Kevin Smith in the movie for the most part, and Jay's just kind of there. They have this unnecessary subplot with Rosario Dawson because maybe I guess it's because she was shooting Ahsoka, so they could only use her for 2 days. But that whole subplot story was completely unnecessary and stupid, and an unadded dramatic overtone for Dante's character. They screwed up the Elias character, which was my favorite part of Clerks 2. And when they did do this character change, I was like, oh, this is going to be something great. And it ended up just being this repeatedly runaway gag that was never funny and just was beaten into the dirt, and it really amounted to nothing. And by the end of the day, Clerks 3 was just an utter disappointment. I get that this movie is very, very important to Kevin Smith and all this kind of stuff, and no disrespect to him. If that's important to him, great. If that's important to certain fans, great. But I was wanting something along the lines of Clerks 2, which was hilarity and fun times with friends kind of thing. And what we got was a very almost soap opera-y acting disappointment in my eyes. And I'm like I said, I'm pretty sure you're going to be talking about this later.
Yeah, I'll talk about that later.
Absolutely. I figured as much. So what is your number 3?
My number 3 is Babylon, which I don't think you ever saw. Is that correct?
Oh, you finally saw it? You never told me. You never told me you saw it.
Yes, I did. I saw Babylon.
No, I won't see it because I don't have 3 hours to waste on this damn film.
Yeah, I will be talking about this more later. But just from the disappointment aspect of it, this is a movie. You have Damien Chazelle coming off, La La Land. I loved, and this one is dealing with kind of old Hollywood, and you had Brad Pitt and Margot Robbie as your 2 main leads. And so just from those things alone, which honestly until October, that's all we even knew about it. I mean, there wasn't even we were waiting saying, is this still even coming out this year? Because I haven't trailers, things like this. So going throughout the year, this is really all we knew about it. But I was still super excited about this movie. The trailer came out, was kind of like, this looks a little weird, but it's just a trailer, whatever. I went and saw the movie and was definitely disappointed by it. It lacked focus. It was way too long, and it felt long, and it has lots of problems, which I will be going into later. So.
I heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is just what I heard, because obviously I have not watched it. I heard it was like almost like a live action Looney Tunes, where it was just batshit crazy crap just to be batshit crazy, but cannot connectively have any connection.
There was definitely lots of batshit crazy, especially like there's that first half hour like crazy Hollywood party scene, which really doesn't have anything to do with the story. It's just like, hey, let's start off with this shocking stuff going on, just to
kind of like Baz Luhrmann when Moulin Rouge first started.
And then I will agree with that, but at least the rest of them we kept that same tone, so you knew what it was doing. But then yes, the movie seems like it feels like a bunch like we thought of a cool scene. Here's a cool scene. Here's a cool scene, and except for having some of the same characters involved, it just did not feel like a cohesive movie. It felt like here's a bunch of cool vignettes we thought about old Hollywood, and like I said, I'll discuss it more later in the video. But yeah, okay. It is what it is.
All right, go ahead with your number 2.
My number 2. This is where I'm putting Ambulance.
Oh, wow. This was not that. I don't believe this was that high during the half year. So you must have either rewatched it or really.
Well, it's just because Ambulance, like you said, we were really excited about this movie because Michael Bay. We both enjoy Michael Bay, especially when he's doing the non-Transformers movies. And the cast in it, I love everybody in the cast, from the 3 main leads all the way down to Garrett Dillahunt and all the supporting characters. But it really was just this movie where it's like, I have no problem with big fast-paced action, but this action was like incoherent and all filmed with drones and all kinds of things going on.
I totally forgot about the damn drones.
You forgot about the damn drones, which he clearly loves because he used them way too much.
Oh my God, you got nauseous.
You did. You have Isaac Gonzalez, who I thought this was gonna be her big breakout role because she finally has like a major role, like one of essentially the 3rd lead in this movie, and kind of wasted opportunity for her then, because I mean she was fine in her role, but her role didn't give her much to do except the very ending, which somehow she's like the hero of the whole movie. But then there's the two leads who, as Sean already discussed a little bit, you have these two people who you're supposed to feel for, especially the one, but it's like, no, they're criminals and they deserve whatever happens to them. And as much as you think this guy's pulled into it, he's still partially responsible for the death of who knows how many people and all these
He still
crashes
shot
and
that
accidents and
cop.
everything. And then his cop gets shot because of it. It's like, I have no sympathy for these people. And if I can't root for anyone in the movie, then I can't really, get into the story. And it's just it's just a movie that, based on the trailers, based on the premise, based on the cast, like you said, we had high expectations for, and it's not on my worst list. I still enjoyed the movie to an extent, but it was really disappointing.
Yeah, I totally forgot about this damn drones. There's that one part where it's like, didn't it like shoot up a building and then down a building, then went round like you were on a roller coaster during it.
Yeah.
And all it was a transition shot. That's all.
And there were scenes like there were scenes where it was flying like, and it would go to like where a van would jump over it and stuff, and like, okay, that was kind of a cool shot. But then there was this stuff when it was like going up and down the building for no good reason.
Yeah, if it was the drone following the car chase, that's fine. But then it was like, no, let's just zip through these buildings in Los Angeles for no reason. It's like, what is going? Oh my God, I'm getting motion sickness, and I don't get motion sickness, and this movie's making me feel sick. For anyone who watched our half-year review, spoiler alert, my 1 and 2 are the same damn 1 and 2 from the half-year review. Number 2 is a movie that I felt alone on an island for most of the year, and then Brian finally joined me, and that is Scream. Scream. Everyone put this movie on, and still do, because I've been watching a lot of end of year stuff from other people, and Scream is still high up there on a lot of people's lists. Everyone keeps putting this damn movie on a pedestal, and Scream is not that good of a movie. The whole third act is just a reboot of the first damn film, and not even a good version of said reboot. It is a poor man's version of the first Scream, and Brian and I came up with a better ending, a more conclusive ending, and frankly, an ending that would make me excited to see Scream 6, which, granted, we are because of the New York aesthetic, which we'll be talking about that in another video here in a little while. But the casting, I don't have a problem with really any of the casting outside of like a particular character. It really, the thing that drove me nuts about Scream, besides the third act just being a complete rehash of the first film, is Scream really takes pride in being super clever, super smart, and being above other horror films in terms of not doing the cliches, but if they are, they're making fun of it. But this movie went out of its way to try and dumb everyone down, to basically go, oh, well, we're smart. I'm like, no, this is stupid. Like, and I use this scene all the time. Brian knows exactly where I'm going, which was the Marley Shelton and her son scene, where Ghostface attacks her son. He calls her. She's rushing on her way there. Spoiler, he doesn't survive. And then she gets attacked literally on her front porch, broad daylight. This is a small fucking town, and no one got there in time. No one called the cops. Not a single siren in earshot of this whole thing. This town is like the town I live in now. Trust me, they would have gotten there in time. And then
and then she shows up, sirens blaring. Aren't the neighbors going to be out looking out their windows going, hey, somebody's getting killed on the front lawn now?
And she straight up gets murdered on the front porch in broad daylight, and not a single person saw it. And then you have the death of Dewey, which at the time, I mean, it is what it is, even though, once again, Dewey has survived 4 Scream movies at this point, yet he follows a cliche death that, I'm sorry, Dewey is way too smart at this point. Dewey was never the brightest character. But once you survive 4 Scream films, Dewey is smarter than this. And it was disrespectful to the character the way they killed him. And then when you find out which Ghostface, because shocker, there's 2 killers. When you find out which Ghostface was the one that killed him, because it's the only way it would make sense based off of who the killers were, then the death is even more ridiculous because there's no way that Ghostface could have killed Dewey that way because of height and weight and other things. And it's just one of those things that by the time you get to the reveal of the killers and then you start replaying the movie, which is what Scream's great for, is going back and retracing your steps from what you saw, it's a slap in the face to the viewers. It's stupid because it's like, no, that doesn't make sense. Even the ending or the beginning, which we actually really like, the end, the opening of the film is actually really good. But by now, once you saw how everything goes, it doesn't work that well. And then you have the whole Skeet Ulrich's ghost subplot. It's so dumb. It's really, really dumb. It's, to me, the second worst Scream film, and people are saying that it's the second best Scream film. It drives me up a wall. I know this isn't on your disappointing, but I know that you eventually.
Well, no, I definitely enjoy things about the movies. There are definitely things I don't like about the movie. It did not make my disappointed list simply because I had tempered expectations going in. I mean, like, because
we both did, but then everyone kept talking this movie up like it was like the greatest thing.
But see, I'd already seen it by the time people started talking it up, so I was not disappointed.
Touché.
So while it's not everything I wish it would be, I went in not expecting greatness. I was like, if it's great, that's great. But I'm just, because Scream 4 was kind of eh. So I was kind of like
Scream 4.
Yeah.
And for the record, every person that I've talked to, I have told them our ending, and all of them went, yeah, that actually would have been a lot better. I was like, thank you, Hollywood. Sign us up for screenwriting. Yeah. Going to my number one movie, shocker. I mean, what did y'all expect? Look who you're talking to. Of course, this is my number one most disappointing film of the year. It's not in my worst, though, but it definitely is my most disappointing, and that is Jurassic World Dominion. I would say where to start, but we've talked about this movie ad nauseum, and on multiple videos. So I would say go back and watch those videos, but I'm not going to do that because that was like 6+ months back. But this movie promised something to us in the trailers, which was a world with dinosaurs. How is the world going to react to dinosaurs living among humans? And what we got was a 5-minute horribly voiceover acting of in the world today with dinosaurs. Then we got another kind of 5 to 10 minutes of that world with basically Chris Pratt on a horse kind of deal. And then we basically got a chase sequence in the middle. And then it became being back in a park with the dinosaurs behind cages. Then the dinosaurs also were not necessarily in the film because, let me tell you something. It's the last movie of the trilogy. You know what we need? Locusts. That's the focus here. Locusts are more important. Locusts is what's going to make Jurassic Park Dominion money. Not the dinosaurs. Locusts. They bring back the original cast, which we're all excited to see, but they're all connected to this stupid Locust storyline. So when they are on screen, we don't give a shit because we don't care about the fucking Locusts. Pratt, as much as I like Pratt, I feel like he phoned in most of this role because I think even he realized that he didn't want to be in this movie anymore. Dallas Bryce Howard, I think, was fine in the film. The villain in this movie, who's supposed to be Dodson. No, I'm sorry. The Dodson that we saw in the very first film would not be the Dodson we got in this movie. That's insulting to the fans of Jurassic Park. It's this movie, much like Halloween. You had a solid to really good first film. You had an incredibly fucking shitty second movie. And then you had just an utterly disappointing finale. If you were going to tell me before this year started that Halloween's trilogy and Jurassic World's trilogy are going to be identical in terms of quality, I would have said you're crazy. But it's an utter disappointment. I dislike this film, not as much as Fallen Kingdom, but I greatly dislike this film. I've seen it twice now, and I was pissed off that I had to see it twice. But even then, it just made me grow more and more angry and frustrated watching it the second time around. Brian actually likes the movie, so I'm not going to get into an argument about it, even though he thinks the Locust thing is fucking stupid as well.
I do want to tell you this. I do want to tell you that while I will be talking about this in another video, I did. This was at an honorable mention level for my disappointing. Like towards the bottom of it, it got pushed off by some other things, but it was considered because even though I enjoyed the movie, it did disappoint me to some level.
Yeah.
I'll just say that.
That's my most disappointing film of the year. Once again, big shocker, everybody. Brian, let's go ahead with your. It's just your one, right?
My number one, as
Your number
you
one.
already talked about, was Clerks 3. And this is a movie. It wasn't that I thought this was going to be the best movie of the year or anything like that. It's just, again, from my expectations versus what we got. It's, I think, the biggest disparity for me. And that is because Clerks I enjoy. I think it is super overhyped, but it introduced the world to Kevin Smith and his band of people, and Clerks 2 was hilarious. Both Sean and I love Clerks 2. I think it's leagues above the first Clerks. It's actually
One of my favorite Kevin Smith films.
one of the best of the Kevin Smith and USP movies. So it came to Clerks 3, and I knew that this is going to be Kevin Smith kind of taking from his own life how he had a heart attack and all this kind of thing, kind of this brush with mortality and how it affected him. So I knew there was going to be some kind of a dramatic through line to it, but I thought it would still have the Kevin Smith kind of comedy and dialogue for the most part. The problem is this movie, it basically did two things. It was, on the one hand, super melodramatic. I mean, it got into so much melodrama and certain scenes where people just really, it should not be doing dramatic acting, trying to do dramatic acting and crying and stuff. And I'm just, most times, anytime they uttered one of these melodramatic lines, I'm just rolling my eyes at this movie. And then the other hand, all the comedy came from all this self-referential stuff where he's like kind of like, hey, remember this in my movie?
That was one thing as you were talking about, I wanted to, not to interrupt you. This did exactly what Scream did with its whole third act. Hey, you remember the first film? We're just going to reshoot the first film. So all the gags that made the first film funny, we're just going to redo.
Yeah, they tried to redo it, and they tried to do it by shoving in a bunch of unnecessary cameos just because he wanted to bring in everybody he's ever worked with in it. And I thought, and there's one that's literally a montage of cameos in this audition scene. It's like, okay, this isn't funny. It's just you saying, hey, look, hey, remember this guy? Hey, remember this guy? Hey, remember this guy? And it was just, it was, I think in my review I said it was self-referential to the point of being almost masturbatory. It's just him getting off on his own, movies. And it's just, and because of those two things, because it was just never actually just funny as a funny movie. It was either self-referential or it was being melodramatic. And I found myself bored through large chunks of the movie. By the time it got to the end, I was just kind of, I like you said, I not only can I not remember lines of dialogue, I can't remember half the plot of this movie because I just like, it went right out of my mind as soon as it ended, and I don't really plan to ever go watch it again. So, yeah,
it was just, I remember sitting in the theater watching it going, am I just in a bad mood or is this just not good? Like, I can't decide if it's me or if it's the movie. And then once I got out of the film and I messaged you, I realized, okay, it's not me, it's the movie. Because I got to the point where it's like, I love Clerks 2 so much. Maybe I'm the problem. Maybe I just came in and I was not in the right mood to watch this film. And by the end of it, after talking to you, I was like, nope, it was the movie. It wasn't me.
Yeah, and like you said,
that's how much I respected Clerks 2. I was like, no, it's not. It's my fault. It's my fault. It's like, no.
Yeah, and like you said, I get that it's a super personal movie for Kevin Smith, and he kind of it's what happened in his life and it affected him and it made him kind of review his life and everything. And I get that, but as a viewer watching what is supposed to be this hilarious comedic series, you're like, well, this is kind of a downer ending to it.
Yeah.
So
those are our most disappointing films of the year. Next, we're going to go into our worst, which I will say, not that I'm trying to deter you guys from watching the rest of this, our most disappointing is usually the more talkative aspect of it because we're more passionate about the disappointing. The worst, they're bad. We have a hard time remembering how bad they are because we try to remove them from our brain because we can only watch so many movies. And if they're really shitty, we don't try to remember them as much. So these tend to go a little faster until we get to like the very, very like top tier ones because they're that bad. But like, this is going to go a little bit faster. We're probably not going to go into great detail on these as much as we did with disappointing. But we're going to go into our worst. I'll go ahead with my honorable mentions this time. First, like I said, no particular order for honorable mentions. The Bubble. Judd Apatow. I really enjoy Judd Apatow. One of my favorite comedies of all time is The 40-Year-Old Virgin. I still laughed to myself to tears watching that movie. I love that movie so much. So when I saw him making this, granted it was for Netflix, but we've proven now that just because it's a Netflix movie doesn't mean it's bad anymore, because Netflix doesn't equal bad. But when you saw that cast, I mean, that's a loaded cast. Now, granted, they're not like A+ actors, but they're loaded cast to the point that are people that we like. And you have this premise, and it's one of those things where it's like it's a premise on top of a shitty film. So we're watching a shitty film being made, so we know it's going to be shitty to a point in terms of that, but that's the comedy of it on top of these actors and actresses that we actually do enjoy. But what we got was what was it, 2.5 hours, 2 hours and 45 minutes? And it was not funny. It was an hour too long. None of the characters are likable at all through this film. And it was just mind-numbingly painful to get through. You constantly are checking your watch. You're constantly trying to make sure, when was the last time I actually smiled or laughed while watching this movie? Because you're watching these people try to be funny, but the dialogue sucks. And the movie ends, and you're like, part of me doesn't feel like this actually really happened. Like, because there's no way Judd Apatow wrote this with all these people, and this was that bad. Newsflash, it really fucking was. Next is Mr. Harrigan's Phone. It's not that the movie is bad. It's just kind of pointless. It's like it's a short story from Stephen King, and you think like, oh, this guy and this old guy and this kid, they become friends. He gets him a phone, and then he dies, and then his ghost is messaging the kid through the phone, and then he's also killing people that wrongs the kid. And you think this is going to become something real big and huge, and nothing happens at all. And the movie just kind of ends. And you sit there like, well, what was the fucking point of this film? Like, it took too long to get to the death of the older character. And then once stuff started to happen, it wasn't creepy. It wasn't even that exciting. And then when they finally figure out kind of what's going on, okay, I'll just throw the phone away. Movie's over. It's like, that was it? Like, what was the point of this? And it's just like, none of the performances are bad in the film outside of this one actor who plays the bully that I just never have liked as an actor. He's not horrible. He's just a guy that I really just can't get behind in Hollywood. I just can't. But it's just a boring ass film that really amounted to nothing at the end of the day. Next is Firestarter. We both watched this. We both actively said, I feel bad for Zac Efron for being in this film, because we so badly want Zac Efron to hit that next level as an actor in Hollywood. This movie is a failed X-Men movie gone wrong. Zero lack of emotion, zero excitement levels. The movie just kind of abruptly ends. I actually, while the credits were running for this one, I went on Wikipedia and read the plot of the original, and the original, reading it, was more exciting than the entire hour 45 minutes I had just watched of that film. It is bad, and it's not even Zac Efron's fault, but he is sleepwalking through that damn film. I think he realized halfway through making it, shit, I made a bad decision. Next is Me Time. Kevin Hart had 2 movies come to Netflix this year, this and The Man from Toronto. The big difference between the two is Man from Toronto has Woody Harrelson, who's funny. This one had Mark Wahlberg, who is hit and miss for me a lot of the times, and this was a miss for me. Me Time was just not funny. It was annoying. Kevin Hart, I used to really, really enjoy, but for some reason, 2022, whether it's those 2 movies or these incredibly annoying betting commercials he does now, well, oh my fucking God, he has nails on a goddamn chalkboard now. I have started to really grow to dislike Kevin Hart, and I really have. That makes me sad, because I actually do like him. But every time he gets on my screen, I immediately get aggravated. And I don't want to be, but I do. Me Time, at the end of the day, it's just not a funny movie. It's supposed to be like a buddy comedy kind of. It really is just kind of dull, very, very what's the word? Predictable throughout. You know exactly where the movie's going to go. You know exactly when the turn is going to happen in these movies, and it happens right on cue. And at the end of the day, it's just kind of rushed at the end. It's not good. My final one, and this is one of those that outright angers me. because so many people. This is not as bad as Scream because at the end of the year we saw that some people were starting to kind of see Scream was kind of overrated. This movie is still being talked about as one of the best horror films of the year, and this is like freaking help me with the movie that I fucking can't stand that everyone loves.
That's a long list.
It Follows. This is the It Follows of 2022, and that is Smile. This movie is fucking garbage. This movie sucks so much ass. It is horrifically acted. I love Kevin Bacon and I love Kara Sedgwick. Their daughter, not a good actress. The premise of Smile is fucking stupid. The third act just completely goes off the damn rails. Everything, and Brian even said this because he saw it before I did. All the good, scary moments are in the damn trailer, which is the stupid car door knock scene. That's the only good, real good scene in this movie. It is jump scare the movie. They're not good jump scares. It tries to be The Ring meets It Follows without the STD ghost, and it just is stupid. It's so damn stupid. I hate this film so damn much.
And he's only on honorable mentions, folks.
But this is an honorable mention.
So there are 10 movies he hates worse than this.
Okay. Yes. It's so fucking dumb. But those are my honorable mentions. Anything you want to say about those movies or any of those?
I know some of them I will be talking about. None of them are good movies. I will agree with that. So I'll just leave it at that for now.
Okay.
I only have one honorable mention, and that's because it is kind of what I was talking about, how when I don't usually pick up obscure movies that people haven't watched or things like that. This is a movie that was a Roku original. Not weird. That was a good movie.
I was like, don't you dare bring weird into this.
No, this is a movie that premiered on Roku, and it's not even technically a movie. It was just a presentation of Heathers the musical. I love the movie Heathers. I love stage musicals. This musical sucks. Bad. Whether the actual stage musical, if seen live, my understanding is this is very faithful to that. This is a presentation of that. So I don't plan to go see that because this was horrible. It's boring. It's barely recognizable. I mean, it basically is a bunch of bland songs connected by recognizable lines and scenes from the movie. The characters, especially JD, who is, Christian Slater has a very distinct personality. The person who plays him in this is nothing like that. So it's almost not even the same character. So I just really, really did not enjoy this, but because it's technically not a movie and technically it was not like a theatrical release thing, I just made this an honorable mention. That's my only one, and I guarantee you haven't seen it. So
no, I never saw the original Heathers, so I wouldn't have watched
see, that you need to take care of.
You know what? When we do our thing, we're going to announce at the end of the show. You can make that be one of yours, and then we'll watch it from there. Go ahead with your number 10.
My number 10 is The Bubble. Sean has already gone into this.
Not gonna lie, I thought this was going to be higher for you.
I will just echo everything he says. He had this great cast of people. I thought it would be hilarious, but like every Judd Apatow movie, it's way too long, and it just kind of goes nowhere. And they waste people, and they go into weird things like TikTok dancing dinosaurs, and it turned out to be what could have been a great comedy. It's a good concept and with a great cast, but it was just a complete misfire on every level. So that is my number 10.
How can you have something like Tropic Thunder, which is basically kind of the same damn thing, and then this, and it just don't forget about the dinosaur penises at the end.
Oh, I did forget about that. Yeah,
dinosaur penises. Yeah. My number 9 is a movie that I think at the beginning of the year, you and I were both.
Have you done your 10?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. I'm glad you cut me off before I got too far into it. My number 10 was on your disappointing. And that was Don't Worry, Darling. A lot of the same things that you echo, I'm going to agree with. I was excited for this movie because I really enjoyed Booksmart. I love Olivia Wilde. I love Florence Pugh, Chris Pine, Nick Kroll. Nick Kroll, right?
Yeah.
For some reason, I want to say Nick Skrull. I'm like, that's not right. Nick Kroll. I love all those guys. This movie visually looked beautiful. But the premise was like, I don't know what this movie is. Is it like a Stepford Wives situation? Who knows? This movie, first off, I know that I guess they're not together anymore. I don't get the appeal of Harry Styles. I don't. Everyone was like, he's so amazing in Dunkirk. I'm like, I couldn't tell you which character he was in Dunkirk. I think I can guess which character he was in Dunkirk, but that performance wasn't that great. His performance in this it's fine. It's fine. But I don't understand why everyone has this fucking hard on for this kid. I mean, and his music isn't that good either, guys. He did Watermelon
It was
Sugar.
mostly his like teen fans, the ones who were praising him for this. Let's be
Yeah,
honest.
like
The actual like movie going public was not like, ooh, Harry Styles is a great actor.
Florence Pugh is fantastic in it. If there's one good thing I got about it, visually it looks fantastic, and Florence Pugh's great. The story is
nonsensical.
Yes, and when you finally figure out what's actually going on, the movie completely loses itself because there's too many questions. There's too many logistical thought processes that don't work, that don't compute, not to mention the incredibly fucked up ending. Because, spoiler, guys, they're in the simulated world and she's tied down to a bed next to her boyfriend. And if you die in this world, you die in the real world. And she's been basically kidnapped and is strapped to a bed, being forced to live in this world. But at the end of the movie, in the dream world, she kills Harry Styles. And that's how the movie ends. Hello? That means that you're going to wake up still strapped to a bed with no one knowing where you're at and a dead body next to you. You're either going to die or eventually the cops are going to come in, smell a dead body, and you're either going to get arrested or die. But we don't see that ending because the movie ends happily ever after. No, it fucking doesn't.
Honestly, I'm kind of interested to see where we would have gone after that, but that was the ending.
Had they continued the film for another 20, not that I really wanted this movie to go longer, but this movie actually did need about another 20, 25 minutes of story because when they finally reveal what this is, I'm like, I have a lot of questions that you're not answering. And it could have used that 20, 25 minutes to answer those said questions. And they don't. So at the end of the day, it feels like a half a movie. It feels like we've got the first 2 acts or 2.5 acts of a film, and we're missing that last act and a half. And it just is a muddled mess of a film. And I felt bad for everyone in it because it's one of those things where it's like everyone's doing a good job. Like I said, I don't care about Harry Styles, but no one's bad in this movie. It's purely a shit script. I don't blame Olivia Wilde's direction. I don't blame the performances of anybody. I blame the script and no one kind of going, okay, guys, this shit's stupid. Can we rewrite this? And no one did it. And this was too big of a film because of it being Olivia Wilde's second film and almost like Jordan Peele-esque. She was like being put on this pedestal that she really should have protected herself better. And then he had all the backstage crap that was happening during it that
which mean you just ignore that stuff, yeah.
But I was saying, but all that shit added fuel to the fire when the movie ended up not being good, and it was a snowball effect that just kind of made this movie fall apart at the end of the day. Didn't hate it as much as Smile, but Smile connectively is a better film story wise than Don't Worry, Darling. My number 9, as I was starting to say before Brian reminded me that I had not said my 10. This is a movie that we were call us old horny men. Not that we're that old. But we were both excited for this movie at the beginning of the year because of an actress, Ana de Armas. This is a movie that was on Hulu. And it basically was kind of looked like it was just a movie where her and Ben Affleck were just going to screw 90% of the film. And that's Deep Water. And this movie...
Oh, that's not what I thought you were going. Okay.
No. That movie we're definitely going to be talking about later. Okay. Another Ana de Armas movie. Deep Water, when you watch the trailer, it's like... Ana de Armas is married to Ben Affleck, but she constantly sleeps around. And the trailer basically just makes it look like she's having sex for 90% of this damn film, and Ben Affleck might be a killer. That's where the premise comes off of. What we get is kind of that, but you get this weird subplot with Ben Affleck and snails, and then you get this kind of weird subplot with the neighbors and all this kind of stuff. And at the end of the day, you have one of the sexiest, most beautiful women in Hollywood. You have Ben Affleck, who I don't dislike as an actor. I mean, he's more good than bad. And this story, as sexy as it could be, it was 2 steps forward, 4 steps back on everything that it did. It had a Gone Girl-esque approach to it, but it lacks, which also had Ben Affleck in it, but it lacked the intelligence, it lacked the plot, it lacked the acting, it lacked the story that made Gone Girl as good as it was. And it just kind of felt like a cheap, like, hey, Ben Affleck is in this movie. He was in Gone Girl. Remember that movie? This might be kind of the same thing. It's not, and it's nonsensical. The plot is stupid. It's boring as hell. And by the end of the movie, you're just like, these characters are stupid. Like, not like I think they're dumb. Like, no, they are legitimately stupid at the end of this film, because where we're at the beginning of the film and where we end, stuff has happened, but the characters are in the same point as they are when the movie ends compared to the beginning of the movie. So there is no progressiveness towards the characters in the plot. Brian, you did not watch all this movie. You just watched parts of the movie.
I watched 10 to 15 minutes, was bored and was going to tap out, and then just skipped through to see if it got any better. Let's just say that. And then, but I heard that the movie as a whole was not good, so I never actually went back and finished watching it. So
yeah, and hands down, I'm not going to look at the actor's name because he frankly doesn't deserve to be acknowledged. The neighbor who's trying to be like the quote unquote detective, even though he's not a cop, he apparently is a well-renowned actor, even though I never heard of him, but he had one of the worst fucking performances of 2022. I could not stand him on screen. He was horrendous, and I can see Brian already trying to look it up.
I don't even know who you're talking about. But,
I'll look it up real quick. He's
Tracy
so bad
Letts?
in this damn movie. What'd you say?
Is it Tracy Letts, the older man?
Yes, it's
No.
Tracy Letts. It's Tracy Letts.
I recognize the face, but yeah.
Yeah,
whatever.
Tracy Letts is so horrible in this film. And when I did see reviews for this, people were like, Tracy Letts was on a really great performance. Did you watch the same movie? Because he's horrendous in this film. It's on Hulu. I wouldn't recommend it unless you want to see one scene with Ana de Armas gets naked. I know we're in a time where you're not supposed to glorify beautiful women and anymore because bad. But the movie, the trailer is literally doing that. And there's another movie with her in it that we're going to be talking about later that does the exact same damn thing. So don't get mad at us.
Well, and this is a movie that's directed by Adrian Lin, who's the guy behind stuff like 9.5 Weeks and stuff like that. So that's his thing, is erotic thrillers. So
yeah,
that's what people going to this looking.
We're guys. We find her fucking attractive. So
yeah,
bad us. But that movie is not good. What is your 10 and 9?
My 10 was the bubble. My 9, you already talked about at this point as well. It's Halloween Ends. This is a movie which you kind of, again, have already covered all this. It's after the first one, because I'm not a Halloween fan. Even the original Halloween, I think it's fine. I
agree. I think the first Halloween is solid.
Halloween 2018, I'm like, this is actually pretty good. I'm curious to see where this new trilogy is going to go. Second one was awful, pretty much universally acknowledged as such. The third one, though, we're like, we still have hope. It might be good. We're here. This is going to be the best one, and this is going to be the culmination of everything. And I went and watched it, and like you said, it went off into 5 different stories, none of which really ended up coming together. And then the ending was just kind of like, who cares? And I honestly, by the time this ended, I'm just glad that it's Halloween Ends, and I hope that Halloween did end, because I don't care to see any more of this entire series. That's all I have to say about that, and you've already discussed it.
I think you and I could have written a better ending for this, just like Scream.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and move into my number 8, which you have also already discussed, and that is Smile. My number 8 worst movie of the year. I am not a fan of what some people call elevated horror, which is just basically saying boring horror. Because
this isn't even elevated horror in my eyes.
But it tries to. People try to act like it is.
It's their way to defend it when you don't like it. Kind of.
It's essentially a lot like It Follows, which I enjoy. It Follows far more than Sean does. We're not going to get in that debate. But I do enjoy it more than he does. But it's kind of the same thing. It's this chain that moves along from person to person.
It's the Ring meets It Follows.
Yeah, and there are several times where there's jump scares in the movie. But again, all those jump scares shown in the trailer. And beyond that, the movie is just boring. I'm sorry, someone just smiling at you. It's creepy maybe the first time, but throughout the movie, you're like, okay, somebody's smiling again. Ooh, that's so scary. Nothing about this movie I liked. I didn't care about anybody who was in the movie. It was supposed to be a big coming out for I forget her name. It's Kevin Bacon, and Keira Sedgwick's daughter is the star of this movie. I don't think it's going to do anything for her, even though the movie is largely successful and it's been praised as this great movie. I think in the long run, it's not going to do anything for her, because this may be one of those movies where it is not as bad as I think it is, But when I put it, how much I hear about people praising it and loving it, it just makes me dislike it more because it's not that good, people.
That's why it's an honorable mention for me instead of a worst, because it's like it's not like
It doesn't
that
actively make me hate
bad,
it.
but
It was just
everyone is putting it up here that it makes me hate this fucking film.
this was originally supposed to be on. I'm not sure which one it was. Paramount Plus, I think, one of the streaming services.
Yeah, it was a streaming
and they
service.
decided to release it
They thought it
theatrical.
was so
This
good.
feels like a straight to streaming movie.
Yeah. Going to my 7 and 6 are both movies that you have said you actively have not seen, so you're not going to really have anything to pitch in on both.
Have you done your 8?
Okay, my 8, 7, and 6 are both all 3 movies that you have not seen. So I'll just knock all 3 of them out right now.
Okay.
8, I keep jumping around. That's because you just did your 8, and so I think I'm ahead of you. Number 8 is a horror movie that popped up on Peacock. The only reason I checked this out was because of the lead, and that is They Them. This was had Kevin Bacon in it, which I was like, Kevin Bacon. I should know better, because the same thing happened last year or the year before that. Kevin Bacon was in a horror movie. It was that house movie. I can't remember what the hell it's called now.
Yeah, we thought, oh, it could be Stir of Echoes again. No.
Yeah, and it wasn't. It was one of the worst films of the year. Shame on me. I should have known better. Another Kevin Bacon horror film. I was like, oh, and it's at a camp. It's like a.
But now it's woke.
Yeah, it's like a woke, scared, straight, gay, transsexual camp, and it seems like there's a killer there, almost like a Jason-esque type of character, even though they never went to that kind of level. I was like, okay, I'm gonna check this out, and it also had oh crap, who was the other name in it? Because there was someone else that was in it, and I was like, oh, her and Kevin Bacon. I'm gonna have to look.
I don't recognize any of these names.
No, she's like a counselor or whatever.
Anna Klumsky?
Oh, Anna Klumsky from My Girl.
Okay.
I was like, I haven't seen her in forever. And this movie is not scary. It's not enjoyable. It's woke, but it's not even like that, like in your face woke, outside of like 90% of TV that's out there now. This movie's just blah. That's just all it is. It's just blah. There's no good performances. Kevin Bacon, even then, I kind of feel like he put on a better performance playing as himself in the holiday special at Guardians. It's just not a good movie. You knew who the killer was right from the get-go, because they didn't really do a good job of misleading you. So when the killer was like, oh, is it Kevin Bacon? No, it's not fucking Kevin Bacon. And then when you find out who it is, you're like, well, it's the only other big name in the movie, so why wouldn't it be that person? Spoiler alert, it's Anna Klumsky. And the movie, there's no supernatural elements to it. It's just she was at the camp before and they mistreated her, so she was going to kill everybody. Okay, cool. And the movie just ends, and then it tries to do this big, like, woke, like, I'm proud of who I am now, and I'm coming, and she steps into like the spotlight and the music plays. It's like, oh, fuck you, kind of an end. It's not that good. Number 7 on Netflix. Brian saw the trailer and was like, nope. And I was like, I'm going to give it a chance. And that is Senior Year. Rebel Wilson. I'm not the biggest fan, but she has moments where she actually is really, really funny. But she's one of those where it's like, if you give her a whole movie, she's going to be annoying through most of it. But she's good in small parts. But this was her whole thing. But she had lost a ton of weight. Good for her. And this was kind of like almost like a hot chick, or kind of like a fish out of water kind of thing, because she's a cheerleader who went into a coma, wakes up like 20 years later, and then she tries to go back to high school. The premise is funny. There are some funny moments, but there's only maybe one good laugh out loud moment in the film, but at the end of the day, it's, once again, tries to be too woke to the point where it's nauseating. And the thing that really just pissed me off and irked me about this film is, like I said, Rebel Wilson lost a lot of weight. That's fantastic. I'm happy for her. She looks great. She's happy, all that kind of stuff. But because she's supposed to be playing this cheerleader character when she was younger, they have to make her do certain things like dancing in tightly skinned leotards or wearing sexy cheerleader outfits. And she lost a lot of weight. So she's got that loose skin. That's health. That's science. That's a natural thing. But to use then a body double to replace her from behind the back, so that way you don't believe that so you try to believe that she is this like skinny girl, but then you see her later in the film in like jean skirts and jean shorts, and you can see the way her legs look there. But then when they do behind the back shots, it's a skinny girl. It's like, guys, I'm kind of insulted for Rebel Wilson that you guys like can't just let her be her in this movie, that you have to try to like insult our intelligence by putting someone in for her. And it's not even anything that's like crazy, like, oh, Rebel Wilson can't do this dance, because Rebel Wilson can totally do it. But they didn't want to go, oh, well, there's no reason why she would be, loose skinned or looking like she lost a lot of weight because she's been in a coma. So let's just put a body double in there. And it's like, guys, we're not stupid. And I kind of feel bad for Rebel Wilson here, because you guys want her in this, but you don't want to show her the way you should show her. You should embrace her and her weight loss, not try to like mislead us into not believing that. And that really rubbed me the wrong way while watching the movie. A lot of people kind of enjoyed it that actually watched it, that are fans of Rebel Wilson, but the movie itself is not good. Brian obviously was like, nope, I'm good. Fine. Keeping on with the wokeness is Disney Plus's Cheaper by the Dozen, which Zach Braff, who I like because I finally watched Scrubs for the first time this year. And I actually had a lot of fun watching Scrubs. It actually made me appreciate Zach Braff finally, that I didn't appreciate ever at all, because I never understood why people like Zach Braff. But I actually get it now because I watched Scrubs. Cheaper by the Dozen, Zach Braff, Gabrielle Union, who we like. But first off, this movie is not even Cheaper by the Dozen. This movie is like, we have 5 kids, and then she's got like 3 kids, and then one of them is like from our dead sister, and then another one is like a nephew, and then another one is this. So it's not even like their fucking kids. So it's not even Cheaper by the Dozen. I knew the movie was going down the shitter within the first like 5-10 minutes when Zach Braff's doing like the overture, kind of explaining the world. And I can't remember the stupid dogs' names, but one of them, I think it was Joe Biden and Barack Obama. And I merely like did exactly what Brian's doing right there. Like, shit. And that's the whole fucking film. They, something happens good with Zach Braff's career, and then they move into a rich neighborhood, and you got profiling happening because half the family's black, half the family's white. You got profiling happening. You got, misleading. You got rich snobs, all this kind of stuff. It's not funny. It's not good. Then you have like the whole third act, like the family's going to all come together and rise to the occasion and yay and all this kind of stuff. And it's just like, this is corny as shit. Like, it's trying to be Full House, but you know what? Full House actually did it right. This didn't. And it was, and then it also kind of did the Christopher Robin thing where he gets promoted and he gets all this success, but then the family's like, you're not the same anymore because you got everything that you wanted. So you need to abandon what you did to being a family again. It's like, fuck you, family. Like, he's living his dream. Like,
you're not even my real kid. Get out.
Well, he's not even doing anything bad in the movie, but it's Disney. So like, he misses like a game, and then all of a sudden, like, the whole family turns on him. It's like, dude, it's like, he's literally like becoming like everything he's ever wanted, and you guys forced him to do it, and now you want to take it away. I was like, I hate when movies do that shit. It drives me insane. But yeah, so I went 3 there because I knew those 3. Brian wasn't really gonna have anything to pitch in on those, but that was my 8, 7, and 6. So if you want to go 3 in a row now, that's fine. Give me a chance to try not to.
Well, I don't think you've seen my 7 and 6, so I'll at least do those.
Yeah, just go. Yeah, go 7 and 6.
7 was Babylon, which I talked about. My most disappointed. I think this is the only one that made it on both of these lists. I believe, yes, it is. I already talked about why it disappointed me. As far as why it was actually bad, I talked about the non-cohesiveness of the story. It feels like a bunch of scenes. It's also way too long. It's a 3-hour and 9-minute movie or something. Which by the time you add in trailers, things like that, it's a 4-hour trip to the movies, not even counting travel time. And it doesn't. And the problem is, it feels every bit of its length, which is weird because the first 2/3 of the movie, it feels like they're just fast forwarding. It's like this breakneck pace of how the movie is going, although you're still feeling how long the movie is. And then it screeches to a halt for the last third of the movie, which makes it feel even longer. I don't blame any of the performers. I think all the actors, I think Margot Robbie did great. Brad Pitt did great. There's a couple of new faces in there who I'm not going to even try and remember their names. They did very well. The only one, Tobey Maguire, who only shows up in that third act, I thought he was horrible, but then again,
he looks horrible in the trailers.
Yeah, he's pretty horrible in that. You have Samara Weaving is in this movie in scenes with Margot Robbie, and they're not playing sisters. What kind of wasted opportunity is that? I mean, come on.
I was just about to ask her, like, did you get confused which one was which?
No, they were. That's what I thought. Saw her in the movie. I'm like, oh wait, I was going to be sisters or something. Is one going to be like the double for the other on the set? No, just two different characters, and yeah, that just seems weird to me. Yeah, it's just a movie that it's just a mess. I mean, some people talk about movies being a mess. I think this is the definition of that because it's just a bunch of things thrown together and none of it really works. And the problem is because you threw so much stuff together, it's so long unnecessarily, which just makes you, as the movie goes on, I started disliking it more and more because I had to sit through it that much longer. And yeah, that enough said about the movie, and you haven't seen that.
I want to ask two things because I heard about two things, and I was like, okay, the person who told me was like, you're messing with me, or oh my god, this is in the movie that makes it horrible. One, in the beginning of the film, is there a woman who pees on a guy?
Yeah, well, one of the first things you see in the movie is an elephant taking a dump on a guy.
And that was the second thing. That's the second thing. It's like, is it true that there's literally a shot of a camera of an elephant shitting on a person, and then a girl standing over a guy and peeing on his face?
Oh yeah, they're less than 5 minutes apart. 5 minutes later, there's a guy who is essentially supposed to be Fatty Arbuckle, an old classic film star who was apparently known for like young girls and things like this. He has some girls sitting there peeing on him because this is at this crazy party where all kinds of weird sexual stuff is going on. And so, yeah.
I would have checked out in the first 5 minutes then.
That I think a lot of people did. But I stuck with it because I'm like, I can get past this. Because like I said, there's that opening party scene is like a half hour long, I want to say. Actually, 40 minutes. Because I remember because 40 minutes in, the title comes up. Which they've done, like in RRR, they did that. And we're like, wow, this is going to be an epic movie. In this movie, you're 40 minutes in, and the title comes up, you're like, oh my God, we're just to the title card. Oh shit, I've been for a long, painful time. So yeah, that's that.
Wow.
So,
okay.
That was 7. 6 for me is an animated movie called Minions: The Rise of Gru. Did you see this? I don't think you did.
I refuse to see this damn film.
I went to see this with my son, who I think he enjoyed this to some extent, but even he was kind of bored by it because I mean he's older now. He's like 13. The Despicable Me movies. I actually enjoy them all very much. The first Minions movie I even enjoyed. I mean it's not great, but it's enjoyable. It's the kind of thing you can take your kid to, but you can still have fun watching it too. As again I said in my review, there are kids movies that adults can enjoy with them. And there's ones that are just aimed purely at kids. Yeah. And this is definitely the latter because I was just bored out of my mind the entire movie. Again, there's nothing actively bad about it. And young kids probably enjoyed the hell out of it. But older kids like my son, even he was kind of checking out. And I was just bored to death. So that was my number 6.
I've never liked a single one of the Despicable Me or Minions movies. So I knew right away. I was like, I'm not seeing this damn film. So I'll go to my 5. Okay. My 5, and Brian, because he loves to get under my skin. This is how good co-stars we are because he loves to get. We both know how to get under his skin to get a rise. He has used this line on me at minimum 5 times this year because he knows every time he says it, I immediately go, and he goes, "This movie still better than the Batman." And that is Morbius. This movie is so horrible. But Brian, because he knows
Batman.
Brian has had that line loaded up for everyone he talks to when they bring up the Batman, because he knows that they're gonna get a reaction out of it. Brian's the ultimate heel when he can be. But Morbius is I'm still trying to remember outside of Dallas Buyers Club. Buyers, not Briars. Is Jared Leto a good actor, or are we just all being misled that Jared Leto's a good actor?
He's the kind of actor who has been good in supporting roles and everything from Fight Club and American Psycho and all those other things. But his lead starring roles tend to be in a lot of obscure small indie movies. There was one called Mr. Nobody. There was one where he played the guy who shot John Lennon. I just blanked out his name. There's things like that where he's been the lead, and I've heard he's good in those. But he isn't, as far as the lead in a major release, he doesn't see it. We don't see a lot of
Just
those.
comes off like a pretentious douchebag, and not that he does that really in Morbius, because the Morbius is just bad. But I'm just trying to think about it. Like, I cannot recall a single fucking performance that I liked him, except for him being cut into pieces in American Psycho, which that's more Christian Bale than Leto. But Morbius, it's horrifically edited. The special effects are shit. The story is stupid. The power set is unexplained. Jared Leto's horrible in it. Matt Smith, who I love, is the best part of this movie, and that's because Matt Smith knows that this movie is garbage to the point where he decided, I'm going to do a shirtless dance scene for like 3 minutes, and they're going to put it in the movie. And they put it in the damn movie because Matt Smith knew what movie he was in. Not to mention the worst fucking post-credit scene in probably movie history. One of the most phoned-in performances by Michael Keaton ever. One of the best actors of Hollywood, and the most phoned-in performance possible. Then they re-released this in theaters because they thought the gifts meant that people wanted to see it. This movie is god-awful. There's nothing redeeming about this film. There's nothing to enjoy about this film. There's literally a story plot about a little girl in the beginning of the movie that they just abandoned halfway through. They try to lead on sequels for this shit. It's not going to get a sequel. If it does, I will be shocked, beyond shocked, if we get a second Morbius film. This movie is crap. But for Brian, it's
still more enjoyable than the Batman.
Fucking liar.
I am not going to sit here and say that it is a good movie. I think it is not nearly as bad as everyone thinks it out to be. The end, the credit scene is absolutely horrible. Worst end credit scene in the history of the world.
Yeah, he can't.
I don't think the special effects are that bad. I enjoy some of the fight scenes, things like that. Again, I'm not going to say it is a good movie. It's not going to be in my top 10 or 20 even. I don't think it's my top half.
If it did, you're trolling me.
but I mean, I found some enjoyment in it, and that's what it is.
Ugh, God, that movie's bad.
I'll
go to my 4, and then you do your 5-4, because I think our 1 is the same thing. So we're just gonna do our 1 together. My number 4 was my number 1 for most of the year, and then the second half we had 3 really, really bad films, and that is Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Oh my God, this movie is shit. This movie is so damn bad. And even though Brian defends this scene, since we brought up wokeness, the fucking woke bus scene that was first off, it was in the trailer, so we knew it was coming, is so cringeworthy bad. Do something and get canceled, bro.
That's what's good about it. You get to watch those people die.
No, stop defending it. That's what's good about it because he kills everyone. No, stop fucking defending that scene. That is a horrible fucking scene. The story itself, it tries to I think what is it? It's supposed to retcon all the Texas Chainsaws except for the first one.
Something like that, yeah.
Because it brings back the final girl from the first one. She's a cop. She has no purpose in the fucking film. They just did it because they were trying to get off the Jamie Lee Curtis Halloween train. The kills weren't that great. It's boring as hell. And much like you said in I can't remember what honorable mention it was for disappointing, where you couldn't like the characters. Can't remember what movie you were talking about. But same thing with Smile, is that you couldn't like anyone in Smile. So if it's a horror movie and you don't like anybody, it's hard to root for anybody. There's no one likable in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You want everyone to die. They try to manipulate you into caring about the lead because she's a school shooting survivor. That was probably one of the most disrespectful written characters in Hollywood this year, about her trying to be a school survivor, so that means she can be a final girl. And it was one of the most poorly written, lazily attempted, just utterly disrespectful writing of a character. Plus, it was horrifically portrayed by, I'm blanking on the actress's name from 8th grade.
Elsie Fisher.
Yeah, Elsie Fisher.
Well, I didn't like her in 8th grade, so yeah.
Oh God, that movie is so fucking bad. It's so bad. And I should have known better because it came out what was it, Valentine's Day on Netflix?
Something like that.
Yeah, it was. Oh God, Texas Chainsaw is so horrible. And I can't remember if you watched it or you didn't, because I'm surprised it's not in your top 10.
Oh, I watched it. It didn't make my list though. It's again not a good movie. I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
It just I wasn't as passionate about my hate for it, so I was like,
Oh,
whatever.
it's so fucking bad. But I also, like, let's put it this way, guys. There's only one good Texas Chainsaw movie, and we're both in agreement on it. And it was 2003.
2003, the reboot was good.
Yes, with Jessica
I
Biel.
actually liked the beginning, the follow-up to that, and I actually even liked Texas Chainsaw 3D, the one that came out.
I never saw the 3D one. The one with Jordana Brewster, I thought was okay, but it wasn't as good as the 2003.
Yeah.
But Texas Chainsaw Massacre is, oh wow, that's an awful film. Go ahead with your number 5.
My number 5. You know what horror movie did make my worst of list? The Black Phone. This is a movie that makes my worst of list just from sheer boredom. And again, this is probably suffering the same fate as Smile for me, where because people are praising this movie, making me dislike it even more because I'm like, what are you talking about? This is not good. I went and saw this movie thinking it was going to be so good, and I was bored out of my mind. There's a couple of flashes of creepy imagery that are interesting, and then there's like the last 5 minutes gets kind of interesting. But other than that, I was just bored throughout the entire movie, and that's all I have to say about the movie because it's like not even worth my attention.
And I'm one of the people that actually really, really liked it, so I'm not gonna argue with you on it. But yeah, I actually really liked Black Phone. It's not gonna make my like top, like my best list or anything like that, but I like Black Phone.
Yeah. My number 4. We're going to number 4. Is Meet Cute. This is a
I was gonna watch this, and you said don't, and I was like, okay.
Yeah, this is a rom-com. I want to say, was it Hulu or Paramount or one of those streaming channels? It's Peacock. That's
it's Peacock. It's Peacock. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a time loop movie, which if you know what that is, it has to do with the Groundhog Day is the Edge of Tomorrows, the things like that. I'm a sucker for time loop movies. I love time loop movies. Because they're so much fun. It's kind of a unique concept. You can apply it to different genres. This time they're applying it to the rom-com. I'm like, I'm going to enjoy this. You got Pete Davidson, who can be funny. He can be annoying, but he can be good. You have Kaylee Cuoco, who I was never a Big Bang Theory fan, but she's done other good stuff. I know you watched The Flight Attendant. You thought that was pretty good.
She was good in that. She's fucking great as Harley Quinn, the animated Harley Quinn.
Yes. I love Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn, but Kaylee Cuoco's animated version is even better.
Yes.
So I was all in. Rom-com, time movie, great. The problem is, for a movie called Meet Cute, they didn't go for cute because this movie very quickly devolves in. It's not a light rom-com. It turns into a lot of yelling. It abandons the whole comedy of the rom-com whatsoever. It's not fun. It gets just kind of dark, and it's just. If you want to watch people argue for an hour and a half, if that is fun for you, you might enjoy this. But otherwise, it just took what could have been a great concept and just ruined it. And so I just really disliked this movie for that reason. That was my 4.
Okay. Yeah, I'll go 3-2. You go 3-2, and then we'll both do our 1.
Okay.
All right. So my number 3. This is a movie that I think you and I both were like, this isn't going to be good. But I think I watched it. You're like, why? Why did you watch that? Like
Just
you
the
knew.
Batman?
What?
No, nothing.
You say Batman?
Yeah.
You asshole. Disney's Pinocchio.
Oh.
This movie, the only thing because you asked me like, why, Sean? Why did you watch this? I was like, because it had Tom Hanks. It's because of Tom Hanks, and blanking on who played Jiminy Cricket, but that was why.
Was Joseph Gordon-Levitt?
Yes, Joseph Gordon-Levitt was Jiminy Cricket, and then of course Tom Hanks. I was like, it can't be that bad. And Luke Evans is in it, so it's like it's got people in it that I like, so it can't be that bad. Oh my god, this movie is fucking horrible. Here's the equivalent of when you know a Disney movie is going to be bad, because this happened in another film, The Lion King. The live action, as I say in quotes, Lion King, there's literally a moment where you follow a dung beetle rolling a ball of dung with Simba's hair on it for, what was it, like a minute? And you're like, what? Why are we watching this? Yeah. And it was like, this is Disney's way of telling us this is shit, because we're actually watching shit being rolled around on screen. There is literally a moment in this film where Pinocchio is sitting when he's crouching down in the street looking at horse shit and he's intrigued by it. And they stay on this shot for 30 seconds to a minute of him describing why this piece of shit is interesting. That is Pinocchio in a nutshell. It is a piece of shit that is trying to be shown off on Disney. And so now I've figured out Disney's formula. If there is shit in the movie, then Disney thinks it's shit. So when Little Mermaid comes out next year, if at any point you see a fish shit in the ocean, you know what you're about ready to walk into. Tom Hanks is mediocre at best, which is not something you say about Tom Hanks. Luke Evans is actually really good in the movie, but he has very, very little scenes. But what he is in, because he gets a singing part in it, he's actually really good. They change scenes from the cartoon because it's PC now, so they can't be drinking beer and smoking cigars today. So now they drink root beer and they break things because they're kids and stuff like that. And then the donkey scene is borderline horrifying for any children who watch this movie, because it's like a horror movie when the donkey scene happens. But this movie is just not good. And hey, newsflash, everybody. Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, it's fucking shit also. For everyone who says it's one of the best animated films of the year, that movie's crap too. There's a third Pinocchio movie that came out this year with Pauly Shore, who played Pinocchio. That's horrible also.
You watched that one?
No, but the Honest Trailers did an all three Pinocchio thing.
Okay.
And just like the minute to 2 minutes that they showed of that movie, oh my God. So I don't know what everyone was stuck up their ass this year about, let's make a Pinocchio movie, but all three are shit. And everyone, speaking of everyone putting shit on a pedestal, that Guillermo del Toro one is going to put on the highest of pedestals. It's probably going to win the Oscar for Best Animated. That movie fucking sucked. But it's not as bad as this. Disney's Pinocchio was horrendous. Enough to the point that you sat there looking at Pinocchio, looking at a pile of shit for almost a minute long. Not to mention also the word influencer was used in the movie. And also wanting to call Pinocchio Chris Pine as a joke was also in the movie. That's just some of the lame ass jokes. And also, I don't remember. Answer this for me about the original, because I haven't seen the original.
I'm not sure I remember much of it, but okay.
But in both Guillermo del Toro's and in this, Jiminy Cricket is never with Pinocchio at all. They have maybe 2 total scenes together, and then the whole movie is Jiminy Cricket chasing after Pinocchio because he gets separated from him. I could have sworn that they were together a good chunk of the movie.
I don't remember it that well. I think he largely was, although a lot of Jiminy Cricket was Disney invention, and these stories couldn't use Disney. Well, I guess the
Disney one could have.
Yeah, the one could have.
But yeah,
but I don't remember it well enough.
If I had a stopwatch, Jiminy Cricket maybe spends a total of 5 to 7 minutes with Pinocchio through all the Disney one, and even less in Guillermo's. So what the point of Jiminy Cricket in general for this? Yeah. Anyway, it's a horrible film. Number 2. This should have been number 1. I wanted this to be number 1. But our number 1 came out, and you just can't ignore it. You just can't ignore it. This movie is the other movie we were talking about when I mentioned earlier when it comes to gorgeous actress in Hollywood, Armis. Yeah. This was a Oscar baity film. At least we figured it was an Oscar baity film. This movie is infuriating. It's misogynistic. And me now going the woke route, calling misogynistic shit. It's disrespectful. It's downright just mean. And I honestly felt bad for A, Ana de Armas, and B, the woman they were portraying. I don't care how true to life it apparently is. This movie is just downright brutal to watch, and that's Blonde, the Marilyn Monroe biopic starring Ana de Armas. I will say this, Ana de Armas does put on a great performance. That's the only good thing I can say about this film. This film is almost 3 hours long, and it is basically them just brutalizingly shitting on Marilyn Monroe through this whole film. Her being raped, her being beaten, her being drugged, her being gaslighted, her being this and this, to the point where I was like, do they just fucking hate this woman? Because I'm getting angry watching this movie, not because of what happened to Mary Malone, right? Because I'm sure a lot of this stuff technically happened, but because the directors seemed to revel in it. They seemed to enjoy shooting these scenes and had fun, basically kind of torturing the Marilyn Monroe character throughout most of the film. And I shit you not, one of the dumbest fucking scenes of the year. And I'm going to spoil it because you're going to go, that didn't really happen. And I go, yes, it did. You can watch it. And I actually had to, I explained this to Brian. Brian goes, that didn't happen. I go, I'll pull it up right now. Fucking pulled it up. There is a scene. Marilyn Monroe is sitting in her garden. Earlier in the film, she has an abortion. She's pregnant right now. And she's talking to said baby in her stomach. And she's like, I can't wait for you to come out. You know, then I'm going to love you, blah, blah, blah. And then the baby in the womb goes, scared wise, are you going to do what you did to me last time? Basically, are you going to abort me, mommy? And she's like, no, that wasn't you. That was a different baby. No, that was me. It was all me. So you have an unborn baby in her begging to not be aborted. This is a fucking scene in the film and makes her cry. And she claims that she loves this kid. And you know what happens in the very, very next scene? She trips on the beach and the baby dies. That is Blonde. Congratulations, Netflix. You have a winner. This is a horrible fucking film. And it's painfully long. And even the end is just kind of like when, and I'm not trying to sound sick, I'm not trying to sound cruel, when Marilyn Monroe, quote unquote, either kills herself or murdered because you don't know, you're kind of just glad because you're so just like sad at Ana de Armas's performance and Marilyn Monroe in this film that you're just like, at least she finally fucking escaped. Because my God, this movie was painful to watch for her. This movie was horrible. And Brian, this was on your anticipated for the fall, and you never watched it.
Because Ana de Armas and having her play Marilyn Monroe, I was very intrigued. Especially kept seeing a lot of the stills they released where they painstakingly recreated, like so it looked exactly like the real scenes.
Okay.
So
also, sorry, real quick. So the infamous is a 7 Year Itch, where she does the under the gray thing. They shot that shot and replayed it like a fucking sports event in 10 different angles, 10 different times. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. It was 2 minutes long of them just showing different shots and angles of the great scene. After the third one, like, we get it. We get it. Nope, you're going to get 7 more.
I was very intrigued to see the movie, largely because of Ana de Armas. Then I saw that it was 3 hours plus long, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to watch this for 3 hours long. And then especially when I started hearing nothing but basically negative reviews about it, and kind of hearing how it was, it wasn't like it's not. They don't even technically label it as a biopic. They label it as like a fictionalized account of her life because most of it kind of happened, but maybe didn't happen quite this way, or some of it maybe did happen, but they can't say it happened because they don't want to get sued, things like that.
Oh, so for the JFK shit alone.
But then because it became so brutal and stuff, it's like I don't know if I want to watch that for an hour and a half, but I definitely want to watch it for 3 hours. So when I heard Sean talk about it, I'm like, yeah, I think I'm just gonna pass on this.
Yeah, the JFK stuff is it's bad. It's bad. Because I was sitting there watching going, they're gonna get sued for this. Like this is good. That's bad. This is really, really bad. Go ahead with your 3 and 2.
My 3 you've discussed. My number 3 worst movie of the year was Firestarter. And again, this is a movie that I don't know if I even call this actively bad. It's completely boring, and especially coming off of the new high that Stephen King movies were on because of the It movies and because of even some of the stuff that's gone on to Netflix, like Gerald's Game and things like that, and Doctor Sleep, which we both loved, even more than The Shining. It's like clearly Stephen King properties are hot again. So I'm like, they're remaking Firestarter. Okay, I don't know if it needs to be remade, but I'm in. Especially you got Zac Efron. This could be good. And then you watch it, and it feels like some kind of direct-to-video just remake of something, like, you know, when they remade, you know, Carrie in like the 90s with a straight to video version of it. And it's just, it's Zach looks bored because, like you said, I think he just showed up. He's like, whatever, dude, just give him my paycheck. You know, it feels like he's about to enter that echelon of, like, you know, the
Straight to
Bruce
DVD
Willis
kind of
and
thing.
the Mel Gibsons. And these people are just like pumping out straight to video movies. Although this did technically come out to theaters. I think it was one of those that premiered the same day on
It was.
Peacock or whatever. But it was just boring. The only actor we liked in it was kind of just sleepwalking through it. Little Girl, I suppose, was fine, but it was just a completely uninteresting movie beginning to end.
Yeah, you can't really blame her for it. She
Yeah.
did what she was supposed to do in the movie.
Yeah. My number 2 worst movie of the year is a movie called Duel. This is a movie that stars Karen Gillan.
No, which to attack you on Blonde, you can attack me on this. This was on my most anticipated for 2022, but then you basically said don't, and I didn't. And I was so excited for this movie because the premise is there, and you were like, dude, this movie sucked.
The premise, just the quick short version of the premise, is basically that they're in this world where people can be cloned now. And what they do is, if someone gets like a terminal illness, they know they're going to die, they can create this clone, and then they will like have them live together for, I forget, it's a week or a month or something like that, because they basically want to imprint on them, because they obviously have their looks, and they're going to get all their genetic stuff and their memories and their things, personalities like that. But they also want to kind of make sure they kind of teach
So
the
that
other
way,
one,
like, their families wouldn't
so
miss
that their
out.
family and their loved ones can still have that person in their life. It's a clone of them, but it's basically the person lives on. So Karen Gillan gets this diagnosis. She's going to die. She gets this clone, then finds out, oh, she's not going to die after all. I don't remember if it's a mistake or she goes for remission or whatever it is, but she's not going to die. But the law states that you can't have the person and the clone can't both be alive. But they aren't just going to kill off the clone, so they basically have this essentially like dual combat where the two of them fight it out to see which one gets to live.
In theory, this sounds fucking great.
It's an interesting concept. And I even said, if this had been made as like a mainstream kind of movie, a studio movie, I think it could have been very interesting, along the lines of, you know, The Island or something like that. Not even like an action movie like Michael Bay, but it could have been done well. But this is clearly an independent small movie, so it has a very independent feel to it. It was going to be a lot more just kind of morose and kind of dreary. And then to make it worse, though, Karen Gillan plays both roles, speaking in this just monotone. There's no explanation for why. Everything she says, she just talks like this, no matter, no emotion and everything. She just talks in a monotone through the entire movie for no known reason in both roles. And it just makes you hate the character. I kind of want them both to die. But then you get to the end of the movie and it's totally anticlimactic and it doesn't even wrap it up. And it just made me dislike this movie so much. And that's why it's my number 2.
Our number 1. Now, very, very rarely do we see a trailer for a film, and just off the trailer, we are in an agreement that this is going to be the worst film of the year, and that we weren't going to watch it. And then they said, we're going to put this on Netflix, and you and I are like, are we going to do this? Are we gonna watch this? If we are, we're doing it together. Like, if we're gonna do it, we're gonna Stelma and Louis this. We're both gonna hold hands and we're gonna jump off this fucking cliff together and watch this horrible film. And you know what? I don't want to say disappointed, because it did exactly what we thought it was gonna be. So it's one of those things where it's like, you know what? You know what would really suck? Getting hit in the nuts. And then you get hit in the nuts, you're like, oh my God, that sucked. It's like, what did you expect? You knew it was going to hurt. So what did you think was going to happen when you sat down and watched Rob Zombie's The Munsters? Now, because through most of this video, when Brian and I have talked about the same videos, for the most part, have talked first. So I've kind of taken a lot of Brian's thunder away from him.
That's right.
So I'm going to let Brian talk about The Munsters first.
Yeah, so The Munsters, I've watched The Munsters when I was a kid, and it was in reruns. It was fine for what it is. I would never really had a preference, Munsters versus Addams Family. So then they come out with this. And, no, first of all, I think I heard at some point Rob Zombie was making The Munsters. I'm like, okay, whatever, maybe, you know.
Well, it's
Tim
because we
Burton's
thought maybe
doing-
there was like a horror kind of thing.
Yeah, Tim Burton's doing Wednesday. She's taking on the Addams Family. Rob Zombie can do the monsters, and then this trailer hit, and people. It was either the best troll job ever,
Yeah.
or it was just gonna be the worst movie ever. So like, what is he going for here? Because it clearly looks like some kind of like zany family comedy, but shot like a '90s syndicated TV show, and and it definitely wasn't straight horror. Which I mean, the monsters wouldn't be, but you thought maybe Rob Zombie would go that way. He didn't.
Yeah.
He loves the show. Apparently, wanted to keep that campy edge of the show, which it absolutely is campy. But this trailer looked just horrific. But you're like, okay, now I gotta watch to see what the hell this thing is. So we did. We what we call stinker watch this movie. We watched it together. As basically Mystery Science Theater 3000 style, because like, okay, if we're gonna watch it, I don't think it's gonna be fun to watch on its own. So maybe we can at least have fun watching it and making fun of it, which to some extent we did. Because I mean, it definitely had no laughs. There was not a single, not for lack of trying. It had tons of supposed jokes in there. Not a single joke in the movie was funny.
It was the equivalent of you being at a comedy club and the stand-up guy making a joke and you heard in the crowd. That was the equivalent of the jokes in this film.
Yeah, there was no laughs at any of the jokes. It clearly had no budget to it. At one point, people were trying to say it cost like $40 million. Rob Zombie disputed that, so who knows what the truth is.
There were certain points where you and I were like, this actually looks very well shot. This looks very well good at this point.
Well, there's some things about it, like when you have like the sets, like the house, things like that. It clearly didn't cost a lot of money, but it definitely was going for a certain aesthetic. It kind of had it felt, it's one of those movies that feels like everything's on a set, but that could work for a TV.
I remember what we said. I think you and I both said, I go, this looks like if you and I got to film this with no budget, we would both be very, very proud of how this set looks.
Yes.
But for a Rob Zombie movie, it's bad. But if you and I shot this movie, we'd both be very, very proud.
It basically looks like if you walk around during like Halloween Fright Fest at Six Flags or Universal Studios, something like that. That's what this movie's aesthetic is going for. And so, yeah, I mean, it looks cheap. Like I said, it was filmed. It's weird. It looks like it's filmed on video in the 90s, like a TV show. There was just nothing funny about it. And the thing is, I just don't understand who the audience was he was going for this. Because people who like the monsters, I don't think they would like this take on it. People like Rob Zombie stuff aren't going to like this weird comedy family thing he's got going on. And it was like trying to be like, I don't know, a live action Hotel Transylvania, but without any actual jokes. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
It was one thing that you didn't touch on that you had a problem with was the color hue through the whole. It had this. It was green,
right? Green kind of thing going.
It had a green color hue. Like no matter where they were in the castle, it was overtly green or purple or blue, and for no reason other than just, I guess, color variety kind of thing. They added, and I I hate this because I brought it up in one of our very, very first episodes of Weekend Crusaders. I hate when movies try to use zany comedy sound effects from like the 80s and earlier. Because there was that one point at the end of the film when I think they knock on the door of like the real estate agent. And this is in the trailer, so it's not, it's anything thing, but it's like, and Eddie Munster's like there, and she does the whoa, 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 and falls back. And you're just like, what the fuck was that? And it's like, they
this movie felt like a Mad TV skit making fun of the monsters, is what this movie felt like.
Yes, that to the point. You had, and what we kind of, yes, Sherry Moon. That's what I'm saying. Like, this is something that you and I, if we had the ability to do it, which we just, let's put it this way, the ability's out there. Brian and I just don't know how to do it. So if you guys want to gladly show us how to do this, we want to do a thing where we're watch along with stuff, kind of like Real Rejects and stuff does, but we just don't know how to do it right, and we don't want to put it out shitty, and we don't want to watch something and have you guys just watching us watch something off screen. But we do this thing now when we watch stinker films where we recast the movie as we're watching it. And the actor playing Eddie Munster was trying to do his best Zachary Levi performance. Sherry Moon, who's not a great actress, was doing her best like female Captain Jack Sparrow.
She was doing Jack Sparrow. I forgot about that.
Yeah. Well, that's what you were doing. You're doing the
whole time. She's like, oh.
Her father, is it the Count?
Mm-hmm.
He's basically trying to do his best Robert De Niro from Meet the Parents. Everyone's trying to do a rendition of another performance from somebody else from another film. Never did any of these characters feel like a character. They felt like caricatures of somebody else. There was at least 5 to 7 times where the movie just stops to show what they were watching on TV and like stop the movie to watch the TV show that they were watching. And it was just weird and very poorly acted. And then I think we did a time check and there was like 12 minutes left in the movie. I'm like, what's the third act hook? Like, how's this movie going to end? Because nothing's really happening. Or like, is something going to drastically happen and that's going to lead to a big third act kind of ending? Or is this movie just going to end? And that's what happened. The movie ends with the intro to the TV show. And ultimately, at the end of it, I mean, it wasn't overtly long. So it wasn't like, oh my God, this is 2 hours long. I think it was like right around an hour 20, hour 30. So it wasn't long. It felt long because like the first 50 minutes felt like an hour and a half. But it was just, I agree with Brian. I remember when it first came out, everyone started trashing it. The people who were fans of Rob Zombie and were fans of the Munsters were greatly defending this film, but they hadn't watched a single scene yet. They were just like, well, you guys don't know the Munsters and you guys don't understand Rob Zombie. It was like, it doesn't matter. We've seen what Rob Zombie does in movies. Now, yes, he's allowed to make other films. It's nothing against Rob. He can do that. But this is not the movie. I don't know who this is for. This is definitely not for kids. It's definitely not really for adults. It's not for fans of the Munsters show. Now, granted, I didn't really watch the Munsters, but I don't know who would watch this because Rob Zombie fans aren't going to enjoy it. I don't know who this movie was for. And to this day, except for people who are just trying to carry a torch for Rob Zombie, I still haven't figured out who actually likes this movie. And just defends it for the sake of, trying to, carry a shield for Rob Zombie for some reason. And this movie is just abysmal. And it's one of those things where it's like, we knew it ahead of time that this movie was going to be abysmal. And we weren't shocked by it. So it was one of those things where it was like, by the end of the movie, it was like, this is totally the worst movie of the year, right? And Brian's like, probably. And I was like, no, there's no probably. It is. And you're like, yeah, you're right.
Well, we still had half a year at that point.
We did.
We're like, I hope nothing worse comes out. That would be really bad.
Yeah, that was the thing. And like I said, Blonde got really, really close. But by the end of the day, I was like, Blonde is at least, as much as I hated Blonde, it's at least trying to do something. It's failing in every essence of the word. And Ana de Armas is trying to put on an awesome performance. So because of that, I have to put it above the Munsters, which with the Munsters, I have no idea what they're trying to do. I have no idea what the motivation is behind it, except for maybe him just being a fan of the Munsters and him just wanting to make his own version of it. But his version is hot garbage. But at the end of the day, it was just like, this was a failed experiment. And not that I was a big fan of Rob Zombie to begin with, but I'm sorry, any movies he makes from now on, I'm not. Unless there's someone saying it's fucking amazing, I am not going to watch a single Rob Zombie movie.
I haven't even watched like the last several he did.
I didn't. The Halloweens, I think the first Halloween was okay. The second one was horrible, and I was not a fan of Devil's Rejects or House of a Thousand Corpses, and I never watched any of the other ones after that. But yeah, the Munsters, clear cut, worst film of the year. We hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys did, go ahead and hit that like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you guys stay up to date with all the latest videos pop up on the Movie Crusaders. And of course, you can follow us on all the social media outlets you see below. Sorry for my coughing through this. Of course, I'm probably going to edit most of it out, so you guys are going to be like, what coughing? But more or less, there's times where I'm just not going to be able to edit it through. Next up, we've got most surprising and best films of the year. Then we will also have our 2003 most anticipated films of the year. And then we've got our second annual Movie Crusaders Awards, where Brian and I give out awards for our top films and special awards for the year. It's a fun video that we make special awards. We have nominees and winners and all that. It's really where Brian and I really have to go into debates because we have to cohesively agree on the winner. It's not his winner and my winner. So it's really, really fun for us to do that. As well as starting it is next year now, but last year in 2021, we shot a show called The Weekend Crusaders. If anyone who's been around long enough, you guys know what it is, where Brian and I, every week, we would talk about 5 movies that came out during that weekend in movie history. We enjoyed doing it, but it got really tiring by the end of the year watching 5 movies every week, or being forced to. It really felt like homework. So we took a year off from it to just kind of do other things, but we both decided that we wanted to bring it back. We're not going to do the weekend aesthetic anymore. It's going to be more like the week of movies that came out during that week in the year. We're not going to do 5 movies. We're going to do 3. We're going to kind of cut it down, make it a little easier on us in terms of, watching and being able to discuss things a little bit further. But we will be bringing back we're going to still call it the Weekend Crusaders because it sounds stupid calling it the Weekly Crusaders or something like that, which we could call it the Weekly Crusaders. But we're going to be coming back with a weekly show where we're going to discuss stuff like that. And then during that show, if there's anything that happens Hollywood news-wise during that week, we'll discuss it on that show as well. If there's anything really worth talking about, which it's Hollywood, there's always something to talk about. But we will be coming back with that. We might not be coming back with it right at the start of the year because we're shooting all these videos, and frankly, we are in agreement. There's not a whole lot of good movies to talk about in January, so we don't want to force ourselves to watch movies that aren't worth talking about. So when we feel like there's a week worth talking about, that'll be when we start the show. So feel free to come back and check out those videos as well as all the other videos. Because of me being sick, there's probably like 8 movies that I've watched that I haven't shot reviews for. At this point, we're into 2023. I'm not going to shoot them. There are just too many of them. And my voice is barely going to make it through the videos that we're shooting right now until I'm properly healed. So if you guys check our Letterboxd right there, that's our Letterboxd here on the bottom of the screen. You can see all my scores for the movies that came out at the end of the year. That'll cover it from there. But yes, anything else, Brian, before we end this video?
Nope, that covered it.
All right. So until next time, we are the Movie Crusaders. My name's Sean Walskrug. That's Brian Michaels. And until next time, in case we don't see you, good morning, good afternoon, and good night, Movie Crusaders.
You're still here. It's over. Go home.